Hello everyone, my name is Anders Nilsson and I will be doing a short overview and demo around REST API or public API, like they like to call it here in LoadRunner Cloud, and the use of API access keys. First of all, for those of you who might not know, REST API is an interface that allows for interaction with RESTful web services. And within LoadRunner Cloud, this is also referred to as public API. And it's not a protocol or a programming language itself, but it can be used by many different programming languages and tools. And it relies on stateless client-server communication, which means that each request must contain all the required information that the server needs so that it can fulfill the request. And since it is stateless, the most common way of transferring different states between the different requests is often with the use of cookies, as we'll see later on. And the most common way to access or make use of REST API is often over HTTP and with the JSON. And since it is programming language agnostic, or how we can call it, it can be used in many different ways. And I will show here today two different tools that will make use of that. One tool is called Postman, and the other one is ViewGen, which you probably might be familiar with. And then once you kind of understand the underlying concepts of REST API, using it is rather straightforward as well. So because each function or action that you would like to perform with the application will most likely have its own API call. So by sending a request using that API call, the application will then do your bidding. So what are then the different use cases for this? Well, in general, REST API is one of the most common kinds of web services today, since it allows various clients to communicate with the server or the application. And in our case with LoadRunner Cloud, it is there to allow for customers to set up or to build custom solutions. For example, for integrating with a DevOps chain in situations that is not covered by the existing tools or plugins. And among those existing tools are, for example, the CI plugins that we have for Jenkins and for Bamboo, basically allowing those tools to start a load test every time a new build is executed. So those plugins that we have put out there, they are built using the LoadRunner Cloud public API. So customers are using REST API to trigger load tests or just to check the status of any ongoing tests, or to simply download the results of any finished tests. And mainly the thinking behind REST API is to provide openness into the product, simply allowing for users to build and to create custom solutions covering their own needs. All right, so how do we then use it? As mentioned earlier, REST API is language agnostic, so there are many tools that can be used, and a programmer will most likely work from their IDE and using a language of their choice. But the easiest way to interact is simply by using a browser, like displayed here on the screen. And although since we only send a GET request here, meaning that we do get an API error, since the authentication call that we are using here in the URL requires the POST requests. So to send those POST requests, we can use an application like Postman, which is a tool for sending HTTP requests, meaning that we can now also then send the required POST requests, for which we can see one of the responses here. And then also finally, ViewGen is also an option, which if you are used to that tool, can also be used to maybe more intuitively set up and run longer or help you develop longer REST API scripts. And I will make use of both Postman and ViewGen in my demo a little bit later on here. So, all right, so Then when interacting with LoadRunner Cloud using REST API, the first step, or maybe one of the first steps we always have to take, is to authenticate ourselves. And there are two ways to do that on the tenant, either by using your username and password, like when a normal person log in, or by using the what's called the API access key. And while using username and password is kind of fairly straightforward, I will explain a little bit around the API access key usage. And the key is based on an existing set of user credentials or an existing user. And not more than 2 keys can be created per user, which is a limit set there to encourage a little bit of more rotation of the active key and making sure that the generation of new keys are more of a consideration and not just done too lightly, so to say. And to generate a key, assuming it has been enabled on your tenant, because you have to open a ticket with the support to get this access. It is located in the product management section. And there you go in then under API access, and we then simply select for which user the key should be generated. And we then copy down the key and the corresponding secret key that we can see here on the screen. And that's very important, since if you don't copy it down from here, or if you lose the secret key later on, you will have to delete this key and then to create a new one, because this is the only time you will see this. And all the created keys will then be listed in here and to which user they belong. And unlike passwords, which expire every 3 months or so, access keys, they do not expire. So using access keys are suitable together with, for example, REST API, but also, for example, if you are making use of any LoadRunner Cloud agents or for on-premises load generators, where maybe a group of them or maybe all of them can then use the same access key. So the access keys are then they are to be seen as long-term credentials, which are to be used by applications or scripts, and they are not meant to be used by normal human users, so to say. All right, so all of this is, of course, then well documented online in the LoadRunner Cloud Help Center, and the API access keys, they have their own section that explains everything, as you can see here. Then we also have the public API, or the REST API as we call it, also have its own section there. And then also that page also then links to the overview of all the available REST API calls that can be made with LoadRunner Cloud. So if you have any further interests in exactly what can be achieved with the REST API for your own needs, this is then the section where you can go and find this information. All right, so I'm gonna go into one of the demos here, and I'm gonna make use of a tool. Well, I'm gonna use 2 tools here first, as mentioned, Postman and ViewGen, and I'm gonna start off with Postman here. So maybe you are aware of it, but Postman is a tool that can be used for API development, and it is as such suited for testing out or simply playing around with sending REST API request to LoadRunner Cloud. And as mentioned earlier, the first thing we need to do is to authenticate with LoadRunner Cloud and your tenant. And I will first do that by using username and password. And so to authenticate, according to the documentation, we need to send a post request to this URL here. So it's auth included there, and it also includes the tenant ID. And since it's a post request, there is also a body that belongs to it. And in the body, we have our credentials, which are then JSON formatted. And then also, since REST is stateless, we need then to be able to keep a state, and that is then used by a cookie. So when you authenticate, you will get a cookie in return, or a token that you then turn into a cookie. And to catch that, we have to do a little bit of coding here. And it's basically it looks at the response body, and it then looks for something called the token here, and it will then save that. So if I then click send here, this will then send this request to LoadRunner Cloud, and we can then see here in the request that yes, we get this token back. So I will then, for the next request or for any further request I do after this, for example, if I want to go and just have a look at what projects are available on the tenant, I will then have to not only send a specific request, and it's a GET request this time, so there's no body to it, but since we need to keep the state, we are then in the header here, we adding the cookie, it has a specific format, it's all documented, and then we put in the token here, and we can see if I hover my mouse on top of it, we can see the value for that. So if I then click send on that request, that will then return all the projects that my user credentials have access to. So if I would only have access to one of these projects, for example, the alpha project here, then I wouldn't see the other one. So it can be easy to, because when I did this demo here first, or when I built it, I was curious about why don't I see all the projects, but that was because my test user didn't have access to all the projects. So you will only see what you do have access to. So then in the same fashion, you can continue here. You can also then do the same way. You send a GET request to a specific URL, you make use of a cookie, and then you click send, and you will then get a list of all the load tests in that project that we defined. So you can see here under projects, I was using the project ID number 1 here. And we can see here that I have a REST API demo project, and I will be using that when I demo the Vue.jn script. But this is basically how you then can go through and try it out. And I was doing this by using the username and password. So if I would like to use then the API key, it works in a similar fashion. And again, we are now sending a post request to a slightly different URL. Instead of just auth, it's actually now auth client. But again, we send the body, and instead of a username and password, we then include our client ID that we generated earlier, and the secret key that was also generated. And again, you click send on this request, and it will then return the token. And if I then, for example, then continue on and going to list the projects, same thing. I make use of the token in the header, but this time I don't use it as a cookie. I add a header named authorization, which has the following format here, which is bearer and then the token value again. And again, if I send that, I will then get a list of my projects back. All right, so again here a little bit. In my very limited experience of using Postman, I mean, this is the first time I'm using it for this demo here. So it is good for when testing out how this REST API is working and playing around a little bit. I'm sure that you can link all the requests together. So in a longer script, if you want to automate some things, for example, or want to try that out, but well, I'm not really a user of Postman, so I rather use a tool that I'm a little bit more experienced in, and that would then be Vue.jn. So just as in Postman, it works in the same way. We send HTTP requests to the same URLs with basically the same content or bodies, and we go through the same authorization steps. So first here, for example, here I'm making use of the API access key. So I send that off, and then I make sure I catch that token here in a web requests web XAParam call. And again, then I create my header here, the authorization header, and using the token in that. And the script then basically goes through, first it lists all the projects on a tenant. And as we saw previously, we will get these 2 projects back. And then I save the string, because I know the alpha project, which I'm going to make use, has ID number 1. So I save that into a string here, the project ID, and I then use that when I make a second request here, where I'm going to get the load test for that project ID. And again, we go in here and well, actually now I've cut it out. I think it was this one here, I renamed it. So we see here that we are then getting the ID for the test I want to use here, the load test I want to run, ID number 2. I save it into a parameter, and then I'm going to run a test here. So I'm going to start a load test. And so basically I call this URL here, and I use the product ID number 1, and then I run the load test with ID number 2, and then on my tenant ID here. And after that, it's a very short test, so I'm going to start it now. And so if we then go in, I'm going to open up. So I have, the LoadRunner Cloud open here. So if I then go into results, then we're going to see it here. So if I now in ViewGen, I start this script here, replay it. So let's see that hopefully everything goes right. So yep. So now we are in and we have started a test. So if I go in here in, and let's see if I can refresh this. Yes, so now we see here that I've started the REST API demo test here, and it's now in an initialization phase. And let's see if I can open that up. So yeah, we see that the test is starting up, and in the script here, I am simply basically doing a while loop until I'm looking for the test status is set as passed here. And because that thing at the moment here, you can see the status here is currently set as initializing when I do this. And it basically just pulls every 30 seconds. And a little bit later on here, it's going to go into a go into a running phase here. So it will take another minute or so. All right, so now the script is up and running, a test is up and running here. We can then see that, I assume if we pull here, the status is now showing that the test is in a running state here at the bottom. And it's a very short test, so it's going to run for just a minute, I think I set it to. So, all right, so let's see here. So this test is then going to stop soon. And we should be able to see here in ViewGen that the status will then go from running into probably stopping, I think, maybe. All right, so let's see here how it goes here. Okay, so now it's finally stopping the test here. So that should probably... All right, so once then the test has finished here, we now see that the status is went over to passed. And then I'm just switching to the output log here. And we can then see that I did ask for the initial results here, and those are the ones being listed here. And I'm keeping them a little bit here just as a comment because it's a little bit easier to see. And so this one will show when your test was executed and the final status of it. And now the rest of it finished here. So, and let me scroll down where we were. And it will give you a little bit overview of how the test performed. So we can, for example, see that the average throughput here, we can have it, number of hits, and you also have a little bit of a transaction summary here. So we can see that this test we had 214 passed and 0 failed. Then you can also request the information for the actual transactions of a test with different requests. And so if you view the output here, we can see that we have those at the end. Down here, so it's a bit of a list here, but again I copied them in here a little bit to make it easier to see. So we can see that in the script I ran, I had these 5 transactions here, and then you can get the different values for each and every one of them. So if we are looking at the results of a test, you can of course also go in and check the results in LoadRunner Cloud, and a report of a test will also be emailed out to the user under which what was used for REST API call or the API access keys once the test has finished. But quite often when you do run tests through REST APIs, you often have some specific requirements for the test setup, which will judge if it was successful or not. For example, usually by using SLAs. And these are then what you want for check for in the results when they are coming back. So if I go in here now, we can see that my test is finished. And if I don't want to do some analysis in here, I can easiest do it from inside LoadRunner Cloud. Otherwise, if I just want to make sure that the test either passed or certain transactions passed their SLAs, we can also see here that the SLA status, for example, is set as passed here. So it can also be automated if you want to check those things. Okay, so that was really everything I wanted to demo for you here today. So I hope you found it beneficial and that it will help you. Thank you very much.